Kiss me and here we go. Oh yeah. All right, it's gonna have to go through 8 sets of gears here. Okay, 0 to 100 in seconds, which is about % slower than a regular 3-litre 4JJ3. Decent torque off the line, 0 to 100 in seconds. Holy, is that truck on its side? Now, if I was a betting man, I would say that the 4JJ3 3-litre engine is probably not long for this world. It is a venerable engine. You guys absolutely love it, especially if you're a grey nomad, if you're a tower, you love the reliability, the bigness of the engine, and the fact it's so under stress. It doesn't put out much power and torque, but it doesn't need to. However, there is a little something called NVES coming, and that is going to bring big fines for manufacturers who have polluting cars. And unfortunately, that 4JJ3 engine, in its current state anyway, even though they've added a stop-start system for this update, it is still going to be way over the government requirements. So as a result, Isuzu are going to have to pay big fines, which they don't want to do. So what they've done is they've replaced the 1.9 litre with this new 2.2 litre. They say it's a replacement for the 1.9 litre. However, if, again, I was a betting man, I'd say that at some point, this 2.2 litre will replace that 3 litre because it is less polluting. So we have reviewed both the Isuzu D-Max and the MU-X before, but we'll still take a look at both, focusing on the MU-X. We'll drive both, we'll launch it, see just how good this new 2.2 litre engine is, and if it actually is a suitable replacement for that 4JJ3. And is it an RIP 4JJ3? So let's get into it. All right, let's start with the pricing of the D-Max because it still isn't cheap. And I think they're slowly over time increasing the price, probably to offset some of the costs of running the 4JJ3. Because from July 1st of this year, they are paying fines for each one that they sell. And they sell a lot of these things. A lot of you buy them. So this thing starts in the D-Max at $36,990. That is for the base 4x2 crew cab. And it's automatic only. The manual is now gone because they've also replaced the transmission. We'll come back to that. This one here is the X-Rider. It is actually one of the lowest specs for the crew cab. It does look very cool though. That will set you back $56,990. I really do like the design. If you want to go watch our full review of the update, go watch our Blade review. I'll link that down below. This one though, the MU-X, actually extremely popular with you guys because you love to tow, and we'll come back to towing, but the 2.2 litre engine makes no compromises, according to Isuzu. If you go for the base 4x2, the LSM, that will cost you $48,990 drive away, and the 4x4 LST, well, that is $69,990 drive away. That is 4x4 to be fair, and you do get a lot of kit, as you'll see when we go on the inside, but it's still a lot of money for any car. But let's talk about design because I really like the way that this thing looks. I like the grille, Isuzu badge spelt out there. You can see we've gone off-roading today, and yes, we will take this thing off-roading. You've got some nice headlights as well, and I think they've done a really tidy job with the design. Let's check out the side. This one here is the LSM. It's the base model in the range, but don't worry, we'll check out the interior of the top spec. It means it rides on these very, very small looking, but actually well-sized 17-inch alloy wheels, also all-terrain tires. You get highway terrains on the mid-spec and the top spec, which is interesting. Also, the 2.2 litre engine is offered on a very wide breadth of product for the MU-X, but not the D-Max. These are not standard towing mirrors, but hey, at least it lets me say again that this thing has 3.5 tons of towing, up from 3 tons on the 1.9 litre. You do get steel steps here, very plastic door handles. Quite tinny feeling too. Otherwise, it's a big, fat family off-road SUV. Let's check out the bum. So what about the bum on this thing? Well, it is very good looking, I think. I really like the tail light designs, even though you can't see it here because it's so dirty, but it's a very good looking design. Isuzu aren't a very big manufacturer. In fact, they're owned by Mitsubishi, so I don't think they have the most amount of money to play with, frankly, but I think the money they do have, they've played with it well. Isuzu spelt out there, MU-X spelt out there, you've got 3.5 tons of towing down there, and some oddly aggressive looking diffuser there too. And in terms of space, I forgot this was the base. Of course, it doesn't have a power tailgate. You get 311 litres of boot space with all 3 rows up. You also get a 12-volt socky wocky here and a tie-down hook, which is a very meaty tie-down hook. Drop the rear seats, you get over 1,000 litres of boot space, and of course, you can even drop the second row and just get a silly amount. That's, again, not powered. But otherwise, I think they're both good-looking vehicles. I really like the way that the D-Max looks as well. And of course, you do get a 1-ton payload, thanks to the leaf spring suspension that you get on the D-Max. But what's the interior like? Let's check that out. Alrighty guys, let's talk interior now of the MU-X, and as you heard here, it's not the nicest door pull. Sorry, it's a really hot day today. So, quality. touch around, soft touch materials in a lot of places. This is scratchy, and I've got to say, it's been so long now, Isuzu. Some of this fit and finish here is just not very good. Like when you open the window, you can actually see the whole thing moving. So yeah, some of the build quality of the whole Isuzu range just could be a bit better. But on the surface, anyway, it's nice. And this was actually one of the first interiors in this segment that was nice. So it's good to see that they're kind of a trendsetter in some ways. Some things I also really love. For example, here in the dash, you have your cup holders. They sit in front of the vent so they keep drinks nice and cool or warm, depending on the day. That's a nice little touch. This here is the LST. It is the highest grade you can possibly get for the MU-X, but if you have a look at the D-Max, the highest one you can get in that one, well, to be fair, it is a lower trim level, but boy, does that feel a lot cheaper. But still, this is a nice place to be. This screen was updated not too long ago, and it is a great display. It's not the most tech forward, but it has plenty of goods and gizmos, including wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. You have some buttons here and some physical buttons here for your volume. So they actually went back to that from buttons, and massive difference. Like, it's really, really good ergonomically. But right now in bright sunlight, I literally cannot even see it. So it does get washed out. Keep that in mind. This is one of my favorite things ever. Just the aircon controls. They're so easy to use. I don't know why cars make it so difficult now to use air conditioning controls, but this is simple. It's so intuitive and it just works. By the way, heated outboard seats here in this spec. You also get two USB-C fast chargers, which is great to see, but no wireless charger. In almost 2026, it is insane to me that this thing does not have a wireless charger. It does have a space for it, but there's no wireless charger across the range, so that's kind of crazy. You get a 12-volt swingy though. That's kind of cool. You'll see here your auto start stop off button. We'll come back to that, but yes, this thing does now have auto start stop across the range. Even the 3-liter 4JJ3 now has auto stop start. Physical shifter. I love that. Simple, and it works. I don't know why, again, more cars can't do that. Storage is interesting. So in some models, you can get it with an opening dash, but in this one, it doesn't. You can open this though. I hope you have nothing heavy in there, because that will whack your legs. The steering wheel is a nice leather steering wheel. It feels good to hold on to. And you have very logically laid out buttons. Again, very good to see. Up in front of you is a digital instrument cluster. Very basic. Even on this top spec, it is still very basic. It shows you just enough information and that's about it. And for all of you who make excuses saying that it's more simple is better, it still has a screen. Just like any other digital instrument cluster, it can still go bad. So yeah, it's just cheap, I think. The seats though, they are very, very nice, very comfortable. Under thigh support, which I really appreciate here in this seat. None for the passenger, but you do get lumbar support at least, so that is good. A couple of cup holders here as well. A nice soft center armrest with a little bit of storage. It's not very much. Some okay sized door bins as well. And here are your 4-wheel drive controls, which we'll come back to when we take this and the D-Max off-roading. But yeah, a relatively nice interior. It is definitely starting to feel dated, even after the update that this has had. It is not the most whiz-bang interior. The Everest still absolutely demolishes it, to be totally honest with you, but it's nice enough. I appreciate its simplicity. Let's check out the back seats. Alrighty, back seats now of the MU-X. Let's do the old door test. Not the best, but not the worst either. Now, I'm 5'11". This is my normal driving position. It's not the best, at least for the second row. So I've got enough leg room. Toe room is not very, very good. Headroom is also not great. My leg angle is also not great. It is a body on frame, so they are always compromised because of the 2 steel beams that run underneath the cab. Having said that, it's just not the best, if I'm being totally honest. Scratchy materials there, but this is all nice and soft, at least in this higher trim. You do get air vents in the roof and this fan speed controller up here, so that is good. 4-kilogram hook. You're getting spoiled. You've also got a couple of USB-C fast chargers, a little storage area as well. I like this. This is like almost early 2000s-esque level of softness and bigness for your armrest, and a couple of over-engineered cup holders, but again, good to see. Oh, map pockets there too. And the seats back here, apart from, again, not having too much space, are actually quite nice. And if you want to, you can recline the seats a lot as well. There is, of course, the third row. At 5'11", I've actually kind of fit back there. I've got enough leg room, enough toe room. Headroom is actually weirdly very good thanks to the boxy design of this thing. You get air vents back there and you also get a little bit of storage. So I don't think it's class leading, but it's actually very class competitive. So good to see. Isuzu, you've done a great job back there. And if you're wondering, how does the D-Max interior compare? Well, considering as you can only really get it as base spec, yeah, it is a big step back. I'm talking 1 USB-C port up front, manual air conditioning controls, and scratchy plastic absolutely everywhere. Also, very, very tinny sounding doors. So yeah, they do definitely sacrifice a lot of things like sound deadening from the A-pillars backwards, but otherwise it's what you would expect from a base model ute. So if you want to pay less or you want to buy the 4JJ3 before people start panic buying them, Make sure you check out CarSauce Buy, scan the QR code on your screen now, or just Google CarSauce Buy. We have a dedicated team of car buyers who go out there, negotiate on your behalf, and get you the best possible deal on any new car. We save people hundreds or thousands of dollars, and it's completely obligation free. You literally don't need to pay until you have committed that you want that car, and you sign your life away, okay? So if that sounds good to you, join our thousands of happy customers at CarSauce Buy and get yourself one of these or a D-Max really quite cheap. Let's talk about the engine. Now, like I said, if I was a betting man, I'd say that this will inevitably be the replacement for the 4JJ3. Really, the main reason is NVES. The thing about the 4JJ3 is, as great, as venerable as an engine that is, it is a polluting engine. So much so that for every one that they sell, based on my calculations, next year alone, they're gonna have to pay about a $1,200 tax. That will continue to increase quite rapidly year on year. And so that engine, it can't make financial sense unless they keep jacking up the price, which at some point people won't buy an Isuzu D-Max. And so even though this is technically the replacement for the 1.9 litre, for me, if I had to guess, I would honestly say that this is the engine you are going to be seeing in D-Maxes 2027 onwards. It is based on the 1.9 litre, but they've increased the bore and stroke. Now it's 2.2 litres. It also outputs way more power and torque, 120 kilowatt of power, 400 newton meters of torque. Neither of those are actually mind-blowing. However, you do get 60% more torque from 1,000 RPM versus the 1.9 litre. So it actually feels relatively similar to the 4JJ3, as you'll see when we take this thing on the road soon. It's also meant to be just as reliable as the 4JJ3. That's what they're telling us. It's got a steel timing belt. It is apparently very easy to service. I can see things like the DPF is actually right up the top as well, which is great if you are taking this thing off-road. It's got a very sealed off airbox, and the alternator is also mounted quite high. So if you want something that is still reliable, I would argue that this probably will still be. Time will tell. It is a new engine. Keep that in mind. However, I believe that Isuzu would put in the effort because that's really why people buy an Isuzu. They want the engine. Speaking of, let's see just how fast this beast is by launching it from 0 to 100. Because on paper, it should be quite a lot slower. Alrighty guys, now it's time to launch the MU-X. Last time we got 0 to 100 in like 10.09 seconds. Stay up there. Let's see what we get now, daddies and mummies, because that's a big demographic of the car buyers. Let me just hold it here. Kiss me and here we go. Oh yeah. All right, it's gonna have to go through 8 sets of gears here. Certainly not the fastest thing in the world. Okay, that is not great. 0 to 100 in 12.46 seconds, which is about 25% slower than a regular 3 litre 4JJ3, which makes sense because on paper, it's actually about that. All right, so let's launch it in the D-Max now. This is about 100 kilos, also lighter than the MU-X, so it should have a better 0 to 100, but what will it be? Well, let's use our specialist timing gear. Please don't fall off this time. Stay, and we should be fine and dandy. Fist me and fist me good. Here we go. Brake boosting it a little bit. Decent torque off the line. Come on, baby. Don't fall, don't fall. Stay up. All right, the 0 to 60 is not incredible. This 8-speed is shifting a lot. A little bit better. 0 to 100 in 11.84 seconds. That's about what I expected. About 20% slower than a regular D-Max, the 4JJ3. Makes sense. Let's drive the MU-X. Alrighty guys, driving the MU-X. The MU-X with the updated powertrain. Let's stamp our foot. So it's quite funny with this engine. It does just feel like a detuned 3 litre 4JJ3. In every other characteristic, it's quite similar. So it now outputs 120 kilowatt of power, 400 newton meters of torque, which just means it's not very powerful and not very torquey, but it doesn't necessarily feel slow, especially considering it now has the updated 8-speed Asian source torque converter automatic, which does feel fine. I think the thing that I've kind of noticed most about this engine is it's actually just quite loud, which I wasn't truly expecting, but yeah, this thing, it makes a ruckus cuckus, I'll put it in that way. But yes, you put your foot down and it feels fine. Like honestly, it feels fine. I think for most people, you're not going to notice that at all. The big claim to fame here though is the fuel economy. It is a lot better apparently. It's not like we were lacking for fuel economy before. If you have a 4JJ3, you'd probably be getting, let me guess, about 7.8 litres per 100 kilometers. In this thing, it is going to be a bit better, but I don't think it's going to be wildly different, especially because you still do have to kind of floor it to get it up to speed kind of thing. The 8-speed does apparently help with fuel efficiency, but let's see what we're averaging at the moment. Well, right now it's not great. 11.3 litres per 100 kilometres, but I think that data is a bit skewed because we were driving around in town. Realistically, you're going to be getting probably low 7s or so. So yes, you will be getting slightly better fuel economy, but don't expect worlds better, even though on paper they claim even for the 4JJ3 it is much better fuel economy because of the new ISS. No, that does not mean International Space Station. That means your integrated start-stopper is what I'm going to call it. Anyway, it's a start-stop system which they've implemented now, and there's two big reasons why they've done that. One is fuel economy. You do get better fuel economy as a result, particularly obviously around town when you come to a stop and it shuts off the engine. But the other benefit of that as well is actually for emissions, because let's be honest, Isuzu at the moment with NVES coming up, or actually it's been implemented already, they need ways to reduce the amount of grams of carbon is coming out of their cars, and this is one of the big ways that they can do it. So yeah, a few upgrades. I'm not going to say it's monumental. It is certainly better than the 1.9 litre, but that was always to be expected. Anything under 2 litres for a car this big is probably quite small. But this 2.2 litre, it feels essentially like a slightly throttled version of the 4JJ3. And that's why you're only seeing it in a few select trims. You're not going to be seeing it fully across the range. I don't think it's a real replacement for the 4JJ3. And so I'm really hoping they don't cut that engine, because yes, that is still definitely the one that most people want, especially if you are towing. How does the MU-X handle? Well, it's surprisingly good. At low speeds, it definitely has one of the lightest steering feels ever, but I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're in a car park or something like that, and at low speeds, that stuff does matter. But ride comfort as well. So they actually gave this thing bigger dampers as part of the facelift, and so you can tell this thing does ride relatively well. Right now we have zero weight in this thing, and even though it's coil sprung in the back, unlike a D-Max, it still has a definite firmness to it that you do notice. But yeah, handling, steering, all of that is actually very class competitive, and especially when you consider that, you know, a Ford Everest is more expensive than this thing. No, it doesn't ride and handle quite as well as that, but it's honestly not as far off as you might think, especially with the update. But what's the new D-Max like? Let's check that out. Alrighty, so what's a D-Max like to drive with the new 2.2 litre turbo diesel engine? Well, I've started on gravel road because despite what it looks like, even completely unladen, I've got to say the ride quality of the D-Max is excellent. Like it's a really well leaf sprung ute, and in some ways the D-Max really does feel like it's in its element in these spots. That was a big bump, but it handled it. That truck is on its side. That's a bad day. That's a very bad day. Okay, but it's not a bad day for the Isuzu D-Max. Let's put our foot down, give it some sauce. Oh man, this thing is not fast, but it does have enough, you know? I gotta say, even in the D-Max, it does feel fine. Again, the 4JJ3 has never been a powerhouse, has it? It's been a hugely understressed 3 litre that really is not putting out much power and torque, and it's extremely reliable as a result. It is understressed. It's the same with this 2.2 litre turbo diesel. I reckon if you put a chip on it, it would put out a lot more power. But even as it is, this 8-speed kicks down. We're getting to highway speeds, and it's fine, but I'm just not gonna say it'll blow your mind. The ride quality of the D-Max is phenomenal. Like, really, really good. It rides so well. Again, completely unladen, and it feels like an SUV. They've really nailed it, and I gotta be honest, most Japanese car manufacturers don't. So yeah, Isuzu have done some genuinely impressive tuning on this thing, but it also doesn't feel like wafty. It's just kind of perfect. In fact, I would only say it's second to the Ford Ranger, which is pretty incredible considering that this is not second to the Ford Ranger in price. Handling as well is decent. Again, it will not blow your mind, but it does handle relatively well. The 2.2 litre engine is about the same weight as the 3 litre, so don't expect like it's going to be a corner carver. Not that anyone really drives their D-Max like that, but it certainly does feel well balanced and yeah, like a D-Max, which is probably why so many of you buy them. And with that, let's off-road in the MU-X. Alrighty guys, off-roading now in the MU-X. Now, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, Matt, that 2.2 litre, it's gotta be so much lighter at the front end. We're gonna have 50-50 perfect weight distribution. You'd be wrong. You'd be very wrong. It's actually about the same weight as a 3 litre 4JJ3. So yeah, you're not gonna have much of a difference in off-roading just straight off the bat. The 8-speed. Now, it's shorter gear ratios between each gear. So you do notice it kind of, well, maybe a bit more lurchy. Interestingly, it does have 6 gear ratios when you are in low range. So it essentially cuts off the last 2 gears, because what do you need 8 gears for when you're off-roading in low range? So speaking of, we've put the car into low range. This thing is a part-time four-wheel drive. So unlike a Ford Everest, for example, this is not permanent four-wheel drive, which does kind of suck. I feel like at this point they could probably implement it, especially as the price keeps creeping up. We have our diff locked as well, although this is not gnarly. We have done some relatively gnarly stuff today, and I must say, the Isuzu MU-X genuinely is a very, very good off-roader. There's a lot of articulation in the wheels. The multi-terrain select, which is a relatively new feature they added, it is so good at just controlling the traction control system and essentially makes going off-road extremely easy. And of course you get a locking rear differential, but you do not get a locking front differential, which again, especially in a top grade, you would kind of just hope that you could get it, I guess, but it hasn't really needed it. So unless you're doing extremely gnarly stuff, I think you'll find that you never truly need it. The other thing as well is the infotainment display. It does have a few off-road menus, definitely not the most comprehensive. Press this button on the steering wheel, you get a 360 camera and you can see what's under you, but that only comes on this top spec LST, at least for the 2.2 litre. So again, that kind of sucks. Really should be across the range at this point. I mean, if for safety, for nothing else. Also, as standard, this thing does come with highway terrain, so we're currently riding on highway terrains and it can definitely do it, but I would highly recommend swapping it out for a set of like Bridgestone Jeweler all-terrains, because frankly, it'll be so much more reliable for off-roading like this. In terms of off-road specs, this thing gets 235 millimeters of ground clearance. Its approach angle is 24 degrees, a departure angle of 26.9 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 19.6 degrees. So all of which are relatively class competitive, I would say, but again, nothing mind-blowing. How does the D-Max go? Well, let's drive that. Okay, so what about off-roading in the D-Max X Rider? Well, I gotta say, stepping in here, boy oh boy, does this feel like a cheap interior. It's a massive step down from the broader spectrum of products that you can actually buy with this engine in the MU-X, but still, it also has one fundamental difference, apart from the interior, with the MU-X, and that is actually how it goes off-road. Obviously, so much of it is the same. Engine is the same, drivetrain is the same, except we have leaf-sprung suspension. But I gotta say, even in this D-Max, the off-roading capability of it is actually quite impressive. So we've got this thing again in low range. We don't have our rear diff locked, but I am gonna turn on this multi-terrain select so you can just see how well it does, because it is really good. In fact, we did a demo earlier with it off, where the car was just spinning, and with it on, and the difference was monumental. But it has been literally 3 hours of off-roading, most of it on dust, but this is the first bit of gnarly track we've seen, and I've got to say, it is doing it with absolute ease. The leaves definitely feel very, very stiff, especially considering we have no weight in the back, but just like the MU-X, it is going up so easily, it's not funny. So yeah, these things are really good off-roaders, and I think that this engine actually doesn't make a bad difference for it. Although I've got to be honest, like I said at the beginning of this video, I just don't see the 4JJ3 surviving all that long, especially with all the CO2 it emits. So I guess with that in context, this engine is pretty much just as good for off-roading. You don't really notice that torque difference. It feels quite similar at low speeds. And with that, let's get into our final thoughts. Alrighty guys, final thoughts now on the new 2.2 litre diesel engine that's come to the D-Max and the MU-X. Is this an RIP 4JJ3? Well, on the surface, the engine, it just doesn't feel as good as the 4JJ3. So if it is to be a replacement for the 4JJ3, I think it needs a bit more power and torque, frankly. However, versus that 1.9 litre, it is so much better in pretty much every way. So you are definitely winning there. Prices aren't cheap for these things, even with that 2.2 litre, and I don't think a lot of you will buy them now. So if you are looking to get into the market before at some point, I think the 4JJ3 will be cut, then now is probably the time to buy one. Of course, if you want to buy one, you want the best price possible, Google CarSauce buy or just scan the QR code on your screen now. Our dedicated team of car buyers will help you. But yeah, this 2.2 litre diesel is a very interesting new addition. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you want it to replace the 3 litre, or how do you feel if it does replace the 3 litre? Like the video, please do share it, and of course, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you around. Ciao for now.